Alright, first and foremost, giving all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai. That's the name of the Most High God, and the name of His only begotten Son, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. This is War Dog Bagaya Allah Banashar, extending greetings and salutations, grace and peace to the elders, and to the Akim that labor in this truth and sincerity. And I wanted to touch on something that I don't see touched on as much as it should be. And it's something that is of the utmost importance, because it's found in the law of the Most High. Alright? And that's that we have to teach our children, and the importance of teaching our children this truth. Alright? These law, statutes, and commandments. The fact that they are the real Israelites that the Bible speaks of, that they're not so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. Okay? Because when they leave your home, you know what I'm saying, you might be at home instilling this truth into them here and there. But when they leave the home, all they're called is Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, black, you know what I mean, Spanish, you know what I'm saying, Indian. These are the things that they call them. And the scriptures call them the Israelites of the various 12 tribes, okay? So it's important that we instill this truth into our children. And like I said, it's found in the law, okay? So I just want to get this scripture first. This is the book of Psalm, chapter 127, verse 3. Lo, children are an heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is His reward. So just emphasizing the importance of children. They are the heritage of the Lord, man. They're the heritage that we receive of the Lord. All right, and a reward. Okay? As arrows are in the hand of a mighty man, so are the children of the youth. And that's right, man. Arrows in the hand of a mighty man are not dull arrows. Okay? They're sharp. And that's what we need to do with our children. We need to keep these children sharp. We need to teach them as much as we can. Everything that you learn, you should be trying to instill it in your children. Alright? Especially the law, statutes, and commandments, and faith in who the world calls Christ, Yahushua Mashiach. Okay? You get it in the law. Because it is a law that we have to teach our children. Okay? Deuteronomy chapter 6. I'll start verse 1. Now these are the commandments, the statutes, and the judgments which the Lord, which Yahweh your power commanded to teach you, that you may do them in the land where you go to possess it. You jump down to verse 6. And these words, dealing with the law, statutes, and commandments, which I commanded this day, shall be in thine heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children. And thou shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. Okay? So it's in the law that we're supposed to teach our children. Okay? If you're not teaching your children, you're going off. Alright? That's plain. It's in the scriptures, in the law, in the Torah. Okay? Okay. This is the book of Proverbs, chapter 22, verse 6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. And that's what you need to do. Okay? Yahweh Shai said, lest ye humble yourselves like a child, you will not see the kingdom of the Most High. Or something to that effect, roughly paraphrasing. Okay? And why did he say that? It's because children are extremely impressionable. Children are like sponges. They soak everything up. And that's how we're supposed to be. And that's why it's so important to train up a child, right, while they're children, while they're young, while they'll soak all this information up and retain it. All right? And then when they grow and they face certain situations, they're going to remember the information and the knowledge that you've instilled in them. It's going to come to mind. You know what I'm saying? Let me go back to the law. Deuteronomy chapter 11. Let's start at verse 18. Therefore shall ye lay up these words, the law, statutes, and commandments, in your heart and in your soul, and bind them for a sign upon your hand, that they may be as frontlets between your eyes. And ye shall teach them your children, speaking of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. All right, so as we're learning, we're supposed to be breaking these things down to our children, okay? Back into Proverbs, chapter 29, verse 17. Correct thy son, and he shall give thee rest. Yea, he shall give delight unto thy soul. Right? And that's another part. That's another aspect to it. Right? They're children, right? They're not born knowing the law. There's gonna be instances where they make mistakes. But when that happens, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to correct them. Right? And that's also in the law. Everybody should know the scripture. Leviticus 19, verse 17. Thou shalt not hate thy brother in thine heart. Thou shalt anyways rebuke thy neighbor and not suffer sin upon him. So if you're not supposed to hate your brother, and the way you show that you don't hate your brother is by rebuking them and not suffering sin upon them, how much more your children? How much more are you going to correct your children? You know what I'm saying? Let me get in Hebrews. This is Hebrews chapter 12, verse 6. For whom the Lord loveth, he chasteneth, and scourgeth every son whom he receiveth. Right? And that's what you ultimately are as a Hebrew Israelite man. You are the Lord of your household. And you're supposed to chastise your son when they go off. Alright? Verse 7. If ye endure chastening, the Most High dealeth with you as sons, as with sons. For what son is he whom the Father chasteneth not? But if ye be without chastisement, whereof all are partakers, then are ye bastards and not sons. So yeah. So if you're not chastising your son, it's as if he's a bastard, man. It's as if he has no father. You know what I'm saying? Let me get back into the book of Proverbs. Chapter 13, verse 24. He that spareth his rod hateth his son, but he that loveth him chasteneth him betimes. Right, that's going back to Leviticus 19:17. Okay? If you don't chastise your son, if you don't correct him, and this is talking about actually beating your child, actually hitting them, right? Because that's how they're gonna learn fast as a child. When you hit them, when they go do something wrong, they're gonna recall that last time I did this, I got spanked, I got hurt. You know what I'm saying? And they're gonna automatically refrain from doing whatever that is that they got disciplined for, right? And so if you don't do that, if you don't show them what they did is wrong and show them that there's consequences to their actions, you hate them. You're not really showing true love according to the scriptures, right? Because I know the white man teaches that if you're hitting your child, that's child abuse, which is why you have the children and the generation that a lot of us grew up in, and that the generation that we see coming up, and these children and these young people are completely out of control and out of order. All right, swearing at their parents, throwing hands with their parents, calling police on their parents, complete lack of respect for their parents. Why? Because the white man made it illegal for you to show love to your child by chastising them the way the scripture says. Okay? Let me get the book of Psalm. Psalm chapter 144, verse 12. That our sons may be as plants grown up in their youth, that our daughters may be as cornerstones polished after the similitude of a palace. And that's what we need to treat our children as, okay? Plants, okay? You water a plant. The water that we need to plant, the water that we need to give to our children so that they grow is these laws, statutes, and commandments, right? There's plenty of scriptures where the laws are likened unto water. The scriptures are likened unto water, right? You can jump down to 15, and it says, happy is that people that is in such a case. Yea, happy is that people whose power is Yahweh. And that's who we need to make our power, Yahweh. And that's that's what we need to instill in our children, that their power is Yahweh. Okay? Not the so-called white man, not Caesar Borgia. Yahweh is their power. Okay? We get in the book of Sirach. This is the book of Sirach, chapter 30, verse 1. He that loveth his son causeth him oft to feel the rod, that he may have joy of him in the end. He that chastiseth his son shall have joy in him, and shall rejoice of him among his acquaintance. Alright, so when you teach your children, right, when you chastise them and correct them when they do things wrong, and you show them right and wrong, right, which right being, of course, keeping the law, statutes, and commandments, following the footsteps of Yahweh Shai, faith in Yahweh Shai, and wrong being following the ways of this wicked world, in the end, you're going to have joy. Because when that child, Lord willing, when that child leaves your presence, they're going to apply everything that you've taught in their everyday life. Okay? And if somebody applies the law, statutes, and commandments and the teachings of Yahweh Shai in their everyday life, it's going to go well with them. Right? As it is written. I'm going to read verse 2 again. He that chastiseth his son shall have joy in him, and shall rejoice of him among his acquaintances. Verse 3. He that teaches his son grieveth the enemy, and before his friends he shall rejoice of him. Which is such a heavy scripture, because it's so true. When you teach your son these law, statutes, and commandments, when you teach your sons and your daughters that they are the children of Israel that the Bible speaks of, not Negroes, not Latinos, not Native Indians, they are the chosen people of the Most High God, and that they are to follow the law, statutes, and commandments written in the Torah, and follow in the footsteps of who the world calls Christ Yahweh Shai, who was a black man. You're grieving the enemy, man. The enemy being who? Deuteronomy 28:68 says we were sold to our enemies, and we were sold to the so-called white man. Right? Psalms 83 talks about the laundry list of enemies, which is these heathens. Right? You grieve these our enemies when you teach your children not to follow the ways of this world, not to follow the ways of their world, not to be homosexuals, not to be a gangbanger, okay? Not to treat our women like whores, okay? You're grieving the enemy, because you're coming that much closer to being a righteous nation, all right? And separating from them, right? And getting the 144 sealed, which would ultimately culminate in the fall of this nation, man, the fall of this world, and the beginning of the new world wherein dwelleth righteousness. Okay? And with that, I want to give all praise, honor, glory unto Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, and Shalom.